We financed our dog Saint at a 30% interest rate. Do not finance a dog. What's up, you guys? I'm Zach, and in this video we're going to talk about baby step number 2, which is the debt snowball, and how you can use it to go ahead and get out of debt as fast as possible, get on to building your emergency fund, and then continuing the rest of the baby steps. So like I said, baby step number 2 is the debt snowball. The reason it's called the debt snowball is because you start by taking your smallest debt, paying it off as soon as possible, and then you take the extra money freed up by no longer having that payment and use it to tackle your next smallest debt. In this way, every time you pay off a debt, you free up more income to be able to pay off the next debt even faster. So it's just like a snowball rolling down a mountain. It's going to gather snow, gather momentum, and by the end, it's going to be a force to be reckoned with. So a couple common questions with the debt snowball are, how do I list my debts from smallest to largest? And do I factor an interest rate? With the debt snowball, you just take the debt with the smallest remaining balance, not the smallest monthly payment, but with the smallest remaining balance, and place that first. You're just going to ignore interest rate at this phase. And the reason that's okay is because say you have one debt at $10,000 at 30% interest and another debt at $1,000 at 5% interest. Well, you might think that you want to go ahead and knock out that $10,000 debt because it's having the bigger interest. The balance is going to keep increasing. Well, if you actually knock out the $1,000 debt first, you'll be able to free up so much more in your budget that you'll have even more power when trying to knock out that $10,000 debt. And also, when you're in baby step 2, you are really trying to work through this. This isn't the time for playing around. So at the speed that you'll be going and with how tight you'll have locked down your budget, you're going to be getting out of debt in a few months to just maybe up to 2 or 3 years, at which point the interest rate will not have made a difference except for maybe a couple $100s. And honestly, if it's going to make a couple $100 difference in your debt, you already had a big enough pile of debt to begin with that a couple $100 is not a whole lot in comparison to the size of your total debt. Do I need to sell my financed car? Not necessarily. Dave Ramsey teaches you that if you can pay off your car in 2 years, that it is okay to keep it. But there's a couple other requirements that go into that. You should never have more than half of your annual income tied up in things that are going down in value. So that is cars, RVs, mobile homes, anything like that, essentially things with motors and wheels. So maybe you can pay off one car loan in 2 years, right? But say you have 3 or 4 cars, if your total value equals up to over half of your annual income, you got to shed a car or two to make sure you're not losing so much net worth per year. And this is just for long-term, you're building wealth. And also you don't want to have too big of payment dedicated just to cars when you can probably get by with 2, maybe. If you're upside down on your car loan where your remaining balance is higher than how much it would bring if you sold it, say the difference is $3,000 and you'd like to get out from under this car, get a cheaper car so that you lower your overall debt, go to your local credit union or bank and get a small personal loan to cover the difference so that you can get the title and actually sell the car. If you have a $15,000 car that you owe $20,000 on, you're upside down by $5,000. So if somebody would be willing to buy that car for $15,000 to be free of your loan from the bank and get the title to actually sell it, you need to pay off that remaining $5,000 difference. So if you go to a credit union, get a loan for that $5,000, you cover the difference and get out from under the car. And you might be thinking, Zach, you said we shouldn't go more into debt. That seems very counterproductive. Think about it this way. You started with $20,000 in debt to that car. At the end of it, you will be $5,000 in debt to the credit union. Pretty good trade. You managed to shed $15,000 in debt, and while you don't have a car now, you can maybe buy a cheaper car in cash, like a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 car, and then all in, $9,000 to get rid of $20,000, which is not too bad. Just remember that if you're needing to swap cars because of those requirements about annual income and value of cars and monthly payments, that you can always upgrade cars later. When you're getting out of debt, this is a time to be getting out of debt. Having a nice car is probably what got you in this situation. And if you're super into debt because of cars and you're car poor, then why should you be in a flashy car showing off? Because you're not actually killing it. So go ahead and get a car that's very modest and actually works and will get the job done, and then know that once you're all out of debt and you have your emergency fund taken care of, then you can start working your way up in car and get something that you think is a little nicer. I have old debt that's in default. Do I include it in my baby steps? The answer is no. You're going to start with all your active debts, put them in order with the debt snowball, and knock them out. Then once you're done, start going and looking at your inactive, in default old bad debts. Then you'll place those in order and see if you can knock them out. And along the way, you can go ahead and be calling these companies that you owe and see if they'll take less. You know, sometimes really old debts, you can settle for 50% of what you owe, 25%, maybe even less if you're lucky. Most of the time in this scenario, you'll need to offer a lump sum of cash to go ahead and knock out the old bad debt. So say you owe $20,000 and you offer to settle for $5,000, and for some reason they take it. Well, that's epic because I'd rather pay $5,000 than $20,000, but they only take a lump sum and the offer expires in a month. Maybe you can't save up that $5,000 in one single month to knock it out. Just like the car situation, it can be okay to go and take out a small loan for that $5,000 because you're still going to be reducing your overall debt by a much larger amount than the debt that you are incurring by taking out that small loan. Isn't there good debt though? Dave Ramsey teaches that there is no good debt. If you think you're pulling one over on the credit card company because of your points and miles, you are also likely spending way more than you need to on things each month. Maybe you pay off your balance each month before any interest is charged. I bet plenty of times during the month you thought, oh, I can just buy that, I'm gonna get points on it. It's really easy to justify buying anything if you get a discount on everything. But when you buy things you don't need, you're throwing away money. If you buy something for $100 that you didn't need, but you get $2 in points or miles on it, you didn't gain those $2, you lost those $98. Another thing Dave Ramsey teaches is that getting into debt for the sake of building your credit score is silly. The reason why? What does a credit score track? How much you love debt and how much debt you've had and how good you are at being in debt. If you have an epic credit score, you've been in an epic amount of debt. The only real reason you need an epic credit score is if you're planning on going into debt again. And I get that there's other situations where maybe you're trying to rent an apartment or whatever, but there are plenty of apartments out there, plenty of rental places that will let you rent without checking your credit score. Maybe they want to look at your past couple months of bank statements to make sure you're having good income, or maybe they just want to get a slightly bigger down payment or deposit. There's options out there. The only reason you need a higher credit score is if you're planning on getting in more debt, and if you're working the baby steps, then you're trying to get out of debt. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Do I pay on other active debts while I'm tackling my current smallest debt? Yes, definitely. Make the minimum payment on every single active debt and use anything extra to tackle your current smallest debt. So next, I just want to share a couple tips and notes. Keep track of your debt in some way as you're doing baby step 2. You know, maybe it's on a whiteboard or in a note on your phone. Either way, it's really fun to watch your debt decrease and how much you're succeeding increase. Tell some close friends or family members. It can be really epic to have some encouragement and some eyes on you as positive and sometimes even negative reinforcement. Like if a friend is like, oh, that's stupid, you're never gonna get out of debt, and you know, no one can get out of debt in this economy, whatever. Prove them wrong. Maybe you want to succeed even harder just because you want to show them that they're wrong, because you can do this. Also, you tackling your debt and getting in control of your finances might be a huge encouragement to some people around you and prove that it is possible and that they can take control of their own situation as well. Don't get into more debt. If you have an emergency pop up, use your emergency fund from baby step 1 and then pause baby step 2, go back to baby step 1, go ahead and refill that emergency fund, and then jump back into baby step 2 where you were at. Lots of people want to know what they do if they know that they have an impending layoff or if they're pregnant. And the answer is go ahead and pause your debt snowball. Pause your baby steps in general. Go ahead and just pile up as much cash as possible and keep it in the bank. You know, worst case scenario, you have the money for a expense or a sudden loss of income. But best case scenario, you have a huge pile of cash that you can just continue to dump onto your debt and continue right back where you were. The last little tip I have is to include everything that has a monthly payment and isn't outright yours. If you need to ask somebody if you can sell it, then it's kind of like debt. And the main thing that I'm thinking about in this situation, but maybe there's other examples, is cell phones. I know that I leased my cell phone through Sprint when I first got it, and so I was paying monthly on it. I had to pay maybe $400 to outright buy it and just go ahead and get out of that phone contract and that lease where it was outright mine, but I just wanted to include that because that's technically a debt, and I would rather own my phone outright than have Sprint own my phone and tell me what I can and can't do with it. And then last, I just want to share a couple stories from my personal baby step 2 journey with my wife. We financed our dog Saint at a 30% interest rate. We bought him through Petland, which was a terrible decision, but we didn't know better and we fell in love with him, and we didn't have the money, so we financed him at 30%. He was very expensive. I don't want to say how much, but had we only paid the minimum payments until the balance naturally hit 0, we would have paid twice as much as what he originally cost. Do not finance a dog. Do not get into a 30% interest rate. Please do not do this. Cool thing was we had a secured credit card from when I was trying to build up my credit score a little bit before I was familiar with the whole Dave Ramsey teaching and plan and everything, which is essentially where you say, hey bank, here's $1,000. Can I be my own lender and secure this credit card? And they say, okay, sure. So they give you a credit card and you're supposed to make normal monthly payments. It's essentially just like a regular credit card. And the thought is if you don't make your payments or if you rack up your balance really high and decide you just need to rip cord out of there, the bank can take that $1,000 that you already put in, or however much money, and use it to pay off your balance and close your account, fixing the situation. So I had racked up maybe $600 on there I was going to use it for gas every month, and the gas was more than I thought. Then I bought a printer. It was this whole silly thing. So I called the bank and I said, hey, please take my balance that I paid in to secure this credit card, pay it off, and then give me back the difference. And so I wound up getting about $400 back out of that and clearing out like $600 in debt. Super epic. The last story I want to share from our baby step 2 journey was that we decided to include moral obligation. For example, a couple of years ago, I went to China with my pastor and his wife, and it was an epic trip. But when I was originally making the pitch to say, hey, you guys should take me to film and take photos, it'll be super awesome, super cool opportunity to get footage and just kind of document this trip, I said, I will pay for half of my plane ticket, because I thought there's no way they're going to bring me, a 17 or 18-year-old, on a trip with them to China. I got to make this a slightly sweeter deal. And they said, that sounds awesome, and we would love to have you. Not on purpose, but I never wound up giving the church the $700 for my part of my ticket that I offered to pay. Now, at the time we were doing our debt snowball, it was maybe 2.5 years after when this originally happened. And I'm sure nobody remembered it, nobody was thinking about it. There was never any sort of contract or formal agreement to this. I probably could have just completely let it go, but I had that weighing on my heart, and I knew it was an obligation, it was a debt that I owed and that I said I would pay. So we decided that 1 month as we were making our tithe that we would include an extra $700 just to go ahead and pay that off. And while it maybe didn't affect our credit score or anything like that, no one was keeping track of it. The weight that it relieved from my heart and my mind was huge to just know that we were all square. So maybe think around and think, do I owe anybody something? Are there any unofficial debts that I should take care of? What are they? And then are you going to include those? Do you want to make right with those debts and those situations and go ahead and get them paid for and taken care of? So that's pretty much all there is to baby step 2. I hope this video has been very helpful and informative for you. Feel free to check out my other videos on the baby steps. I plan to be posting them all within just a day or two of each other. And let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or thoughts on the baby steps. Maybe you disagree with all this. Well, let's talk about it. And also, I would love if you would like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers within my first month of doing YouTube, and I guess that's it. I'm super thankful for you watching, and I hope you have an epic day. Dinosaur logo.